Hello everyone. In today's video I am going to take a look at the Queen's Gambit accepted opening and the Smyslov Variation, which is a very rare line, but somehow still a lot of players online are going for this. So let's see what is this exactly. So d4, d5, c4, takes, knight f3, knight f6, e3, and g6. So this is instead of the more common moves like bishop to g4 or pawn to e6 or pawn to a6, which are the main lines, black goes for g6 and puts the bishop on g7. So this is kind of the Smyslov variation. So bishop c7, for example, bishop g7, castle, castle, and knight c3. So I would say this will be our starting position, but now let's just see two similar openings, and from that you will kind of understand why it is not such a common opening variation in over the board games, rather only in shorter time controls. So what is very similar to this is the Schlechter variation, which comes from the Slav. Knight f6, e3, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e2, short castle, short castle. So basically very similar moves, and here black has many options, like can develop the bishop to g4, to e6, to f5, can play a6, really many moves, but it's also possible to take on c4. And if you compare this position with the Smyslov variation, then black has already an extra move c6, which is one of the most common moves played online in the Smyslov. So it's basically an extra move, and then it's black to move in this position. So this is already, like, we can say that Schlechter is an improved way of playing this variation. And another one is, of course, the Grünfeld. So let's say d4, I mean, some move order, you get the Grünfeld, knight c3, d5, knight f3, bishop g7, e3. So it's a rare line, but still kind of similar, and you understand that, you know, black is absolutely not in a hurry to take on c4. And on the other hand, like, some popular move from white is like bishop d3, and then once again black can win a tempo and then maybe play c5 in one go, or, you know, just use this one extra move, you know, which is like completely free. So basically two main lines for white are take on d5, knight d5, but you can see that we play bishop c4 and the knight goes to b6. So again, this looks like the Smyslov variation, with the difference that the knight is on b6, and this opens the long diagonal for the bishop, makes c5 more possible, e5 more possible. So in just general, a much better version for black. So this is one thing, and another thing which is maybe even more similar, that white plays queen b3. Here e6 is the correct move for black according to theory, but like what is similar to our line is dc bishop c4. So now our minor pieces are the same, but even here black plays like knight c6, and I would consider this as an improved version, since we have the queen on b3 instead of the more normal e2 square. So like knight can jump to a5. That's a threat at this moment. So both of these openings, so the Schlechter and Grünfeld, which are similar to this, or mix, you know, the Smyslov is kind of a mix of these two, are more serious from black. Okay, so let's return to this line. So e3, g6, bishop takes on c4, bishop d7. Basically every game goes like this, and okay, here we just castle. It's a completely normal move. And black also castle. So the main alternative to castling in the online database, I found bishop g4, but this is just a losing move, because actually in two different ways. So queen b3 with attacking on b7 and f7 is already good enough, but bishop f7 I believe is even better. So king f7, knight e5, it's a check, and we take the bishop in the next move, the completely winning position. So bishop g4 not good. So black also castles, and we just develop our knight to c3. Like, black gave up the center. We have 2 pawns there, and we want to push this pawn to e4 in general, and then develop this bishop to e3, f4. So black has to show some compensation for giving up a lot of space. And normally there are like 2 ways to do so. I mean, once again, it's from Grunfeld territory to play for c5 or play for e5. But since black already lost quite a bit of time by allowing white to take back right away on c4, it's absolutely not easy to get these moves. So that's why this whole line is very questionable. Okay, so let's, like, once again, in what I see in online games and what I see in over-the-board chess is completely different, but I would rather use statistics from online chess because, once again, over-the-board, it's like pretty rare position. So what they play online, like e6, for example, that if you see such move, then you can just relax already a little bit because black is not challenging your center. You just play e4. Let's say black plays b6 and you play bishop g5. You have the center. You have easy squares for your pieces, and you are simply much better. So there is not much to talk here. Black has a lot of problems, but nothing else. So e6, definitely not good. Other move is c6. So this is basically the Schlechter with -1 move, so to say. I gave this move a question mark in my analysis because simply play an opening variation with down a move here. It shouldn't be too good, and of course white has many good moves in this position. But what I like the most, and you will see that this move will be the choice in quite a few variations, is to play h3. So the point is that we are not rushing anywhere, but we make sure that this bishop on c8 is not developing to g4. So it's a very useful move to make, and we are in time to play e4 later. And on the other hand, it's not clear how black wants to develop. So, like, obviously bishop f5 is a move which looks like a normal developing move, but once again, like, white is simply has an extra pawn in the center, and black already like kind of agreed to it that okay, he will have less space, and also the bishop on g7 is not like a very nice piece with this pawn chain on against this pawn chain on e3 and d4. So here white has many good ways to play. I would just like to suggest one, which is knight to g5, with the idea of pushing e4 right away and kick this bishop back to some passive square. If black goes to h6, then there are 2 good ways. I believe e4 is the easier because it kind of keeps the material, in a more easily understandable way, so to say. So like hg, like this position is obviously better for white. We have the bishops, black's king is weakened, and we just have a nice position, but computer even favors some lines to give up 2 pieces, but give a check here and then take a third pawn, which is also good, but it's a little bit more complicated, I guess. So I would just go e4 with a very nice position. So bishop f5 is not stopping e4 very long. There is other move like knight d7, also very passive, very common in online chess. We just play e4, like some perfect center cannot be challenged with e5. c5 is obviously not coming now after c6, and in case of knight b6, we just remove the bishop to b3 with easy moves to follow, like we need to bringing the rooks to the middle and so on. Black's position is really bad. So what they also try sometimes this b5, and can normally bishop b3 is also working, but the only idea is to play this b4 and to have attack on e4 pawn. So I would say bishop d3 is an easy square, and then knight b6, bishop e3. And similarly, what I showed before, just queen e2, rook c1 with a very nice position. So also not very good. So yeah, this c6 I believe is just -1 tempo to a little bit passive opening, which is the Schlechter. So not good. b6 is also played sometimes. Extremely bad move. So black is not doing anything about the center. He cannot just develop, so casually without doing anything, because I mean they will have no space. So white just goes e4. Here, of course, when opponent shows intentions to play bishop b7, we don't have to play h3. So just e4, bishop b7, and rook e1. Like e5 is also good, but okay, we can just prepare it. And for example, if black still ignores our play, then we just play e5, knight e8, knight g5, already huge threat, f7 with e6. Black must play e6 and then queen g4, for example. I mean, we can push the h pawn, sacrifices on e6 are already in the air. According to computer, this is completely lost, and it's very hard to argue. Like black has no space for their pieces. So probably it's better to play e6, but then we play bishop g5 again, just with a great position. And I mean, just one line I wanted to show here, that what happens if black wants to remove this pin, but here we can already sacrifice with ideas like e5, bringing the rook on the third rank, and probably eventually joining with the queen. It's gonna win the game for white. So yeah, not good. Yeah, so b6 is just a horrible move. Similarly bad is bishop g4. I would say, at least practically speaking, it's very easy. We just play h3, like kind of forced to take bishop h5 is not there. We just win the piece with g4. So takes, we take back, and there are immediate problems on b7, of course. So black can play c6 once again in this very, very passive position. And one example is rook d1, protecting d4 and preparing to push e4, knight d7, e4, and e5. So this is what you can sometimes see in the Schlechter variation, that black wants to take back with the knight and attack on the queen with the check. But even that position, I mean, even this position is just great for white because of the bishop pair. So we are not giving the bishop pair and eventually start pushing. But it's even better to play d5 and just close this bishop on g7. For example, cd, bishop d5. You get such position, which is like positionally a disaster for black, with the g7 bishop and d5 weak square. So not good. Knight c6 is another move to protect the pawn, but once again rook d1 is good, and some e6. White can even play some bishop b5, followed by bishop d2, rook c1. Once again, pair of bishops, center. Black has nothing, just bad pieces. So bishop g4, also very easy. There is knight b to d7, which, yeah, again, not good. So like, just free move for white, basically. e4, knight can go to b6. I mean, I saw that online a lot of players like to do this, but to be honest, it's not a particularly great square for the knight. We just remove the bishop. Bishop g4, obviously with some ideas of taking, and then d4 can be under attack, but white just plays bishop e3. Next can be h3, take back, bring the rooks as usual, and white is much better. So knight d7 is not posing too many problems. There is knight e8, which actually I had a game over the board for this, but yeah, I won the game, and this knight 98 was not too successful or very impressive, I have to say. So like black wants to bring the knight to d6 and maybe to play b5. That's what I found in the database, but it's quite strange and it's not good. So once again, I recommend to play h3. Not a must, but just very useful to keep this bishop on c8, and we have time to play e4. So black goes knight d6, we go away, and this b5, which makes some sense. So black wants to attack the knight in case we play e4, and also wants to kind of develop like this. But it doesn't work because actually white can play e4, and once b4 happens, and there is knight d5. Okay, this is like, I wouldn't say this is a line you must know, because the moves are not difficult for white, but we still sacrifice a pawn. So knight a6, queen c2, knight d6, rook e1. You can see that all pieces are there, and black is in a really bad position. And now a nice move, bishop g5. So forcing f6, and then removing the bishop. So in case of ed, we always have bishop d5. And next move we can go rook c1, or we can play knight f4, attacking on e6. Possession is on the verge of losing. According to the computer, it's losing. So yeah, really, really bad. And okay, this is also quite rare, this 98. So what other moves black can try? Black can try a6 with some idea of pushing b5 and then bishop b7. In general, I just recommend to meet it with a4, so not to allow this type of development. Of course, if b6 would come, then we can just again play e4 without any problems. So in most cases, black would play c5, and then we play d5, and I will look at this mainly in the c5 immediately instead of a6, which is more kind of regular way to get here, I guess. So there are the two most common moves for black over the board, but online not anymore. Or not in, like, kind of never. Was like there is knight to c6, which makes some sense. White is black is dreaming about some e5, maybe after bishop g4 and then e5. So what you can guess that either this bishop is blocked or goes to b6. Then I like to play this h3 move, just not to allow bishop g4 and then comfortably develop. You can see it's also very good against knight g4, for example, hitting this bishop. So it's in general very useful move. So what happens if bishop f5? So computer really likes g4 in this position. It's okay, but I don't think it's needed. So like this position is good for white, but at least we weaken the king side a little bit. You can do this, but I believe you don't have to. So I would rather recommend just to play rook e1. Idea is e4. Black blocks it with knight e4, and now a very nice move is bishop f1. So the point is that if we would take bishop e4, knight d2, so of course we want to kick the bishop and then push the pawns, but there is bishop d5 with the tempo. So now we cannot play e4 because black takes and then d4 is falling. So we have to move away the bishop, but it gives the time for black to stabilize it. And with e5 coming next, it really looks like some Grünfeld, which is not that bad for black. So that's the point of bishop f1, that white wants to take, and once the knight goes to d2, doesn't want to allow bishop d5 with the tempo, so we can go with e4. And there is no real good way for black to actually meet this plan, because taking is not good, because then it just helps white to strengthen the pawns. And I mean, there was one game, and strangely enough, even computer says such moves for black just to play a6. I mean, just to wait, but then it's possible to take knight d2, and you can see the idea that in case of bishop d5, e4 is there is nothing on c4, so it's winning a piece after this fork. And if the bishop goes back to f5, then we can push d5. Again, if queen takes, then it's a pin. Sorry, it's a fork. And if knight a7, e4, with huge space advantage, knight can come out, bishop can come out. Much better for white. So that's about bishop f5 here. Black can play a6, maybe with some ideas of b5. But we can play e4. There are a couple of lines here, but it's all quite easy to figure out with the help of the engine, and I mean even without the help of the engine, to be honest. So now b5, and again the important pawn here is this e4, so we go bishop d3, and the point is that on knight takes d4, e5 is winning material in every variation. So for example, if knight h5, just bishop e4, attacking the rook and attacking the knight. So knight has to take, queen f3, rook moves, attacking the queen, and now trapping the knight at the end of the variation. The knight also can jump to e8, but then the same happens, so we win everything, and then bishop c6 is winning material, because when the knight was on h5, the pieces were connected, but now those are not connected. So white wins material this way. And if the knight takes here, then just the queen recaptures with threat here and threat here, also winning material. So not working. So yeah, knight c6, h3. I looked at knight d7, one more move, so it's kind of supporting this e5 push, and also maybe the knight to b6. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, actually quite a few games for this position, like with queen e2, I believe, or a3. But computer comes up with an interesting idea, which you can use against both main moves of black, knight c6 or knight fd7. So I guess I would just go with it. So knight d7, and this move is a4. So the point is that once the knight comes to b6, a5 can be a huge problem for black. And if you go a5, then anytime you play for c5, the b5 square is a problem. And also, if you play a5, you definitely cannot play knight a5, c5 anymore. So it's just a useful inclusion for white in this way. So what else? I mean, there is b6, for example, but then we just play e4. There's nothing to challenge the center. I mean, knight b6 would be the move, but it was just taken away. So there is knight b6, and then bishop b3, say knight a5, bishop a2, with ideas of pushing b4 and a5, queen e2. So again, it's not clear how black is gonna break this position. So basically what they can do is to break it with e5, but then a5. So stopping this knight b6, which could potentially put more pressure on this pawn. And yeah, so this idea is really nice, because it makes the development really tricky for black and takes away these annoying knight jumps. So that's, I believe, quite good. So for example, ed, knight f6 is one possible line, and white just plays rook e1, and it's really difficult for this bishop especially, or for the queen, to find any good square, or any such thing. So white can develop the bishop or the queen and just have big space advantage. I mean, d5 is also a move, so Of course, depending on what black is going to do, but it looks pretty bad for black. So in general, when the knight is coming to d7, this idea of a4 is worth remembering, either to take away the jumps or push a5, gain a lot of space, which also, by the way, takes away these jumps, but also gains space. And what is the most common move over the board is knight f to d7. So removing this knight from the way of the bishop, so black can try to go e5 or c5. And once again, this idea of meeting knight d7 with a4, I believe, is quite good. So yeah, so knight c6 now would be pretty much, I mean, not a transposition, because here we didn't even play h3, so a5 is completely fine here. And if black goes knight b6, then we can just remove the bishop. Let's say knight c6, and once again a5, we kick back the knight with a great position. And if black goes e5 right away, then we go a5. So pretty much the same thing, making the development for black very difficult. So yeah, I mean, this is just one way, but it looks quite nice for white. I mean, very difficult to make moves for black. And yeah, one move I missed, I believe, if black goes c5, and this may have been actually the most serious move from black, but it's not popular at all. I mean, in one hand, normally engine prefers to take on c5, which is understandable, because since black lost the tempo with dc4 and we can open the position, it normally always works out for white. But I have to say that, you know, there are like quite a few lines to remember. Whether it's a problem or not, I don't know. The lines are good, so if you are interested, you can invest some time in dc5, because like it has a bigger upside than d5, I have to say. So after d5, white will be better, but not like as much better as if it would be after dc. But you know, in my opinion, you get this line so rarely that it doesn't hurt the investment of looking into dc5. But I can accept other opinions as well. So we just played d5, have space in the center, and we want to continue with e4 and developing our bishop. Normally, yeah, as I said, a6, a4 can be included anytime, so that's a possibility, but normally black goes bishop g4. And here we can do different things, like we can play h3 and take back with the queen. I like to take back with the bishop in general on f3. Because, okay, the queen will be not that great on f3, I guess. Some 97, 95 can come. So it's, I just recommend this move, let's say 97 and e4. So we have the space here. Black's counterplay is not really coming, and basically now black can decide which type of position they want to play. So if they go 98, then white can already play something like knight g5. So trade the knights, and obviously with the knight, it's much easier to push the pawns than if the bishop is on f3, for example. I mean, white's bishop is on f3. So this is what we want to do here. Alternatively, black can take on f3. And in this case, it will be a little bit slower game. So 98, of course, now this bishop is not helping that much, but we can play something like g3, remove the bishop to g2, and then later f4, e5. And we have the bishop pair, and like I would say pretty nice game. Yeah, this line is not even happening that much, strangely enough. I mean, okay, or not strangely enough once again, because even dc is good, but like if I would play it with black, I would look more into this c5, because this variation looks like the only one where, you know, something can go wrong for white. I believe in the other lines are very, very convincing for white, and also not that difficult. Okay, so for the next update of the course, I will we will try to do something about this variation to put some trainables, but till that time I hope this short video will help you. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon.